Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with yet another Tim May podcast, and I've got yet another co-pilot riding with me today in this magnificent flying machine. His name is Matt Wilhelm. Matt, stay off the buttons. Just stay off the buttons. But Matt Wilhelm, welcome once again to the Tim May podcast, my man.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoy my time with you, and sometimes, the 15 or 20 minutes we have slotted is never enough for us.
Yeah, exactly. It flies by, as the old saying goes. But I digress. Let's just jump right into it, Matt. Jim Knowles has been on the job now for 5 months. Ohio State has had a spring game. It wasn't really a spring game; it was a spring scrimmage, which I prefer because you have more good versus good in that, and you have. You don't have these disjointed teams, so you see a little bit of a strength factor going on there. Obviously, this new 4-2-5 defense they're going to play, they didn't reveal a lot of things in the spring game. Really didn't let us get to see a lot of what's going to be exotic about it, for want of another term. But just your general, as we head into the summer, just your general overall feel for what you've heard, a little bit you've seen of Jim Knowles and the Jim Knowles defense. What just impresses you, I guess, about him? I mean, you've heard conversations with him, et cetera. Go ahead.
Yeah, of course. I think first and foremost, if you recall us doing our in-season, podcast last year, the one thing that I brought up was defensively was a lack of an identity. Who are we? What do we do? Are we a coverage team? Are we a pressure team? And because I think there was so much inconsistency, and a lot of the tizzy was made by the way that Oregon kind of manhandled us on our own home field. And that really never changed. And I do think the one, and it's yet to be determined, although we have the horses in the stable now with this Jim Knowles defense is, there was not the dominant pass rusher along the front line like we have become so accustomed to probably almost over the last decade between the Bosa brothers and Chase Young. It's been amazing. And it's been, that one guy delivers that play when you need it in the biggest scenarios. And so we lacked that last year. And I think this year, you mentioned Jack Sawyer, you've got, JTT down there on the front. It's going to look different, I think, which, brings a sense of optimism because what we were used to wasn't working. And so I think, Buckeye fans and, Buckeye football fanatics will be encouraged by the fact that we'll look a little bit different. I think, having not watched a whole lot of the spring game, understanding the concept with my history in the National Football League and playing in multiple schemes, I think what the 4-2-5 will give us, it gives us an extreme amount of flexibility. And what do I mean by saying that? What we saw was probably like an A level, a surface level of what this defense will get to. And I'm sure Knowles and his defensive coaches have a B and a C as players develop and players start to grasp concepts. I think in many cases throughout training camp, when players start to grasp roles, meaning this is the position he's going to be, whether it's right side or left side, whether it's that Leo, up with, standing in a 2-point or down with a hand on the ground. Jim Knowles in 5 months doesn't know everything he wants to know about each and every player. There's so many more scenarios that these players have to be put in. Predominantly it happens in practice. They don't play any preseason games. I think a lot has to get figured out by that opener against Notre Dame because of what that game will mean for our season. But then I think after that, so the prep is truthfully, you're watching a boatload of Notre Dame, you're working intensely on yourself. And then once you overcome that hurdle, you get that W, you can then, and I know that it still counts, but you got Arkansas State, you got Toledo. So if you really want to dig deep into some of the younger players and get them game experience and see how they react, in Ohio Stadium with the opportunity to go out and play and perform, more than just a snap or two here and there, but 25 snaps, 50 snaps, whatever that looks like. Jim Knowles will learn a lot more because then we get to the phase of, although we have to win every game to basically be in that Final Four and to play in a Big Ten championship, I think you get an opportunity to continue to move the chess pieces around because I think Jim Knowles is also no longer playing checkers. It's not just lining up and doing what we do, playing man on the outside, press man on the outside, and not bringing pressure, expecting those four to get home. Jim Knowles is going to, create looks And so we can pressure, we can cover, we can run, bring a 5-man pressure out of the same look. And it's going to force an offensive coach and a quarterback for our opposing team to have to figure that out pre-snap, because it's all essentially going to look the same. And that's where I say, the A, the B, and the C is really where you dig deep into that defensive playbook. But we have to know who's doing it, and we have to have those players understanding at an extremely high level. Otherwise, at every level, whether it's high school, college, or pro, a defensive coordinator will not scrap, but keep those the B and the C, or the C and the D, on the sideline until he knows exactly who he can trust to execute it damn near perfectly every time.
That's what I want to get to, man. It's excellent. That's an excellent take, because that's exactly, he's even spoken of that, in so many words. But, what really stands out, to me about during many conversations with him is his point where he doesn't just want to confuse the quarterback. More importantly, he said he wants to confuse, as you just pointed out, he wants to confuse the offensive coordinator. He wants to keep them on their toes. And in this modern game, can you do that? You can you do that on a consistent basis, I guess,
The way you do that is, of course, there's going to be, game prep for that individual scheme that you're going to see, that you're going to, they've struggled with this look in the past. So you're going to give them that look, and you're going to do a few things out of it. Yeah. I think where you can confuse the coaches, because it's so much a part of the game now, Tim, is the data. What's the data say? Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of fans don't understand what, everyone thinks we just line up and go play, or run the defense that the defensive coordinator calls. But why is the defensive coordinator calling what he's calling? It's, you got to get, what personnel are they in, and how are we going to match it with our personnel? Where's the ball at on the field? Is that, are we backed up? Is it on, is it our territory or their territory? What's the down and distance? What hash are we on? Are we with the wind, or are we against the wind? Those are all factors. And that's just, 6 or 7 that I popped off the top of my head, 6 or 7 factors that go into each and every defensive call. Yeah. That players have to go out and execute. But on the flip side, that a quarterback and an offensive coach has to, also call plays against, to try to not just, in some cases, you hope they're trying to just survive, but they want to make weight. Yeah. They want to take advantage of what they saw on film too. And I think what Jim Knowles has the opportunity to do is, and I'm sure that, Marcus Freeman and his staff will be studying Oklahoma State film on what they did last year. And then also studying a combination of our players in that system, and where they think they can take advantage of certain situations. So that's kind of what happens when there is a coaching change. But it's, while we prep, there are folks now in the football department who are, making their way through that data on who they are and what they do. But then it's the self-scout aspect. Yes. And that's where the payroll just continues to expand as you add these individuals, or these scouting assistants or coaching assistants that just sit behind a computer mostly. And while practice is going on, they're behind a computer breaking down the data, trying to find on 3rd and 5 plus Notre Dame. And I'm just using it as an example, runs some type of 3-step drop, even though it might, it may be out of gun 70% of the time. So when we play them, Coach Knowles and our defensive players will be prepped all week, or all offseason for this matter, because it's the opener, for that situation. And now, can they break tendency? Absolutely. But you're going to call the defense situationally and have your guys ready for, 3rd and 5. There's going to be alerts, bells and whistles going off that it's 3rd and 7, and we're backed up. They want to get something. They want to get the ball out of their hands because they're expecting pressure. So we're going to show pressure. We're going to play coverage. That's where the yo-yo happens of showing one thing and playing another really comes into play, and how data, but on both sides, who we are defensively and who they are offensively, can come into play, as you said, as the game continues to evolve to more than just going out there, running out 11 players and having them go out and run a play call. Yeah.
How much does each individual player have to know on defense, what not just what he is doing, but what he is doing contributes to what they're trying to get done on that particular defensive call, basically creating leverage somewhere on the field. Yeah. How much does each individual need to know what his role is I mean, they want to carry out their role. They know it's important, but you have to know where you fit,
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best teams that I've ever been on, either, collegiately or professionally, is, being 111th, right? Now, stars and, stars make plays, right? Yeah. Playmakers make plays, which is going above and beyond what they're called for. They're not only in their gap, they shed the blocker and make the play for the TFL or the no gain play.
Yeah.
But I would say a lot, and I think having the guys bought in, to this new mentality, to this new defense, I think the more upfront and honest and again, I don't know this about him, at least not yet, is the more transparent and black and white he can be with players. It's like, I'm expecting you to be this for us this year, and give that, because that becomes a goal for that young man, as opposed to saying, we kind of see you here, we kind of see you there. That leaves a very murky gray picture for that player. And it's hard for him to go all in, because he's, one day he could line up at Leo, the other day he could play, be playing, defensive end, and it's just, you want guys that are bought in and become their 111th. But to that point, all of them, and I'm sure the coaches have an amazing preparation schedule for these guys I know Coach Johnson does it, especially internally in defensive line. Is like, okay, I know I'm going to get blocked. How are they going to block me? Am I going to get a single block? Am I going to get a down block and then a pull? What are the characteristics of their offense, especially in the run game, I would say. Or are they a turn protection team? Are they a man protection team? When we give a certain look, can we trigger a specific offensive line call, by the center, or to get from man to turn protection, which means we've got our best player, I'll say our Leo, in a one-on-one situation with the running back coming to block him. That is an ideal situation that any defensive coordinator and a player like JTT or Jack Sawyer will lick their chops to be one-on-one with a back, right? Yes. And it was all to do with us showing one thing, triggering that offensive line call to then create that one-on-one with our superior pass rusher on a running back, and their quarterback standing, 2 feet, 2 yards behind him.
Yeah. Let's get to this, though. Let's get to the crux of it. The crux of it was Oregon kind of snookered Ohio State, but still pushed them around on the defensive line, defensive front a lot that day. Ran the same play with a little bit of variation 3 or 4 times for touchdowns. Are you kidding me? Michigan shoved Ohio State all over the field for the most part. Shoved may not be the right term, but just physically dominated the line of scrimmage offensively by hook or crook. Utah for a while did the same thing. I'm talking about the better offenses they played, or the more physical offenses they played last year. Before you can do all these chess moves and stuff, you have to address the physical aspect of the game, right? Which is, absolutely. And how tough. Because Mickey Marotti was talking about, the little bit of a change in the way they went about offseason this year. And I go, there's that fine line between making it a punishment for what happened last year and between making it a punishment and then or improving, you know what I mean? And he said, you're always working for the future. Punishment's not part of the deal, but when you find yourself lacking in some form or fashion, you address that, right? And that absolutely, that has to happen before anything else happens, doesn't it? Or it has to have happened, right, Matt?
I think in some cases, because I was going to say, the NFL, they always say the NFL is a business, but at this juncture, and I'm sure it's a topic we're going to get to here shortly, it's like with NIL and the amount of money and revenue that's generated from college football, especially at a top 25 program like Ohio State, it's a business.
Yeah.
And I think if I were that coach, especially a new coach, because he doesn't know these guys, at least not, or he is now developing those personal relationships. But I think
he even pointed that out. Go ahead, man. Yeah.
You can put on the film and he'll have one of those grad assistants clip all those dominating physical runs by Oregon and Utah and Michigan where they impose their will on us. And it is the greatest depiction of what a silver bullet defense should not look like, and what has really not happened very often around here. And then I think it allows him the opportunity. And again, anyone that's in the room or even a player that was getting pushed around, whether he was lined up right, or, he got a mental error, or just wasn't physically capable of accomplishing the job, should not take offense like they're targeting him, because that's you're conceptually trying to attack the defense. You just happen to be the player we're focusing on this play. And no one should take offense to that. And if they do, they're in the wrong business, because you're constantly trying to get better and fix your mistakes. And I think it's the greatest depiction of what's not good enough at Ohio State and what's not good enough at Ohio State on defense. And because of those shortcomings, with everything that our offense was and what we have in Stroud at quarterback, really kept us out of the Final Four, or an opportunity at playing for a national championship, or actually an opportunity for playing for a Big Ten championship, which then would have absolutely given us the opportunity to be one of the Final Four teams. So it was that and nothing else.
Yeah.
And so there should be a sense of accountability that should comes, and, but the players should get angry. They should want to fix it, both personally and, we've taken the step, to bring in Knowles to do it conceptually, like who we are schematically. And then I think, and it's not, change the world in 1 year. Marotti will, change variation. His messaging will change slightly, because it might have become, and I'm not saying that it has, a little redundant and lost a little bit of the buy-in and lost a little bit of the merit. So him changing that narrative and, creating his own sense of accountability to be different will then bleed into the players, will bleed into the coaches. And again, that's that new toughness that we hope comes defensively, where there's accountability on every level, and everyone can say what that was not us, and it will not happen again.
Yeah.
Because we know what's at stake. And I don't think anything's changed offensively, because yes, there's going to be Olave and Wilson are in the NFL, Ruckert's in the NFL, but we have players younger and probably as good as them filling those roles. So the offense, to me, should not skip a beat. And I think that the biggest challenge is, how does Ryan Day vary what we do? Because we were so damn good at what we did last year that teams will study us all offseason, route combinations, run package formations, motions, and they're going to have a beat on that.
Yeah.
So they've caught up to our, algebra 2. How do we take the next step and be in calculus class now offensively?
Yeah.
So that's going to be the same. So it really comes down to Jim Knowles and this defense. And I think, frankly, as a former player, I get excited, even the Raiola kid, because I played against Dominic Raiola, the Dylan Raiola kid, the quarterback. I get excited about these 4-star, 5-star recruits, and we get them, Sawyer staying home, JTT coming across the country to come play at Ohio State. We get the names. We have the coaches that have put players in the National Football League on that same path. And I want to see this 4 or 5 year era of recruits all step up and all hit in this system.
Yeah. And they're going to benefit greatly. We'll talk about this before the season, because obviously I'm going to have you on before the season starts. They're going to benefit greatly from having so many players who played last year, who learned on the fly.
Yes.
Got that experience. Know, like you just said, know how it's not supposed to look. You know what I mean? And, and one of the things Jim Knowles is even almost, he's basically admitted he's working now with 4 and some 5 stars, whereas at Oklahoma State, they did good things defensively, especially last year, one of the elite defenses in the country, with basically 3 and some 4 stars and maybe some 2 stars. Yeah. I mean, the talent, like you just said, his own chess moves can be better, right? I mean, from a defensive standpoint, because of that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think, you look at Oklahoma State, and again, I don't know but you figure they're getting the leftovers out of Texas and Oklahoma that Texas A&M, and Oklahoma themselves didn't want. So they get all the 4 and 5 in those territories. And then Oklahoma State has a running at what's left. And those were the bullets in Jim Knowles' gun, And again, he can be a shined up Colt 45. But if the bullets in the gun are old, rusty duds, you can only do so much. You can only, So I think that's there's an extreme sense of optimism around it. I think I love, and it's maybe even the last time I was on with you, I just love Ryan Day's understanding. Yeah. I mean, the man wants to win the Big Ten. The man wants to win national championships, and he knew offensively you didn't need to do much with what Hartline's done in that room, what Alfred's done in the running back room. the offensive line's been able to do, making a switch there. But with him in charge, he needed to go find someone that can potentially match him defensively. Because if we do, confidently with a, mild bit of ego in it, it's like we should run through the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with you. Like I keep telling people, they're 25%. If they're just 25% better on defense, it's major. You know what I mean? As far as that goes.
Frankly, they made strides, and I think it's another topic you're going to get to. With the Eichenberg kid, who's
go ahead. I mean, that's what I want to know. Does it warm your heart to hear that the guy that was talked about maybe more than anybody defensively this spring, and coming out of that Utah game, he was the MVP defensively. But Tommy Eichenberg, I mean, Jim Knowles can't say enough good things about him, Ryan Day, et cetera. Just what does that mean to a defense to have that guy in the middle that he's become a leader? What does that mean for a defense?
Yeah, he's the glue. And you, first of all, for that to be being said about him, because there was some good and there was some bad when it came to Eichenberg. But, he's playing, and starting for the first time in his career. So that's going to happen. That happened to me. That happens to James. That happens to AJ. That happens to, every linebacker that ever. There's going to be a little bit of a glitch until it all just clicks for you. And you could see, maybe not necessarily the caveat is the Michigan game, but it was kind of bad, kind of ugly, then got better, then it got really good. The Michigan game conceptually, I think personally, I'm not going to attack any player. I put that on the coaches. Yeah. The players did what the coaches told them, and you and I have had that conversation before. There were just some things that made zero sense, and it wasn't players going rogue. It was players being coached to do those things and line up in those places that didn't behoove us defensively. But he's the glue, and I think there's just the same way that I said, a center can change the offensive line call. I think that, a Mike linebacker who in many cases, and I know that he can line up on an edge, versus trips or, empty sets or motion out with the back, predominantly in the middle. He's in the middle depth wise, he's 4 yards, 5 yards off the ball. And he's also, in the middle of the defense, right? Because there's, a strong side backer and a weak side backer, or in this case, a weak side backer in a 4-2-5. But it's the communication with it. It's making the call. And it's almost, although there's that sense, that 1/11th mentality I just told you, these guys still, they've got to get lined up. But if they're misaligned, or because I've studied the game as the Mike linebacker and I know what everyone's job is to do, and I've studied enough tape on who we're playing that, for example, my nose tackle, is not in his gap in this formation that we practiced, say, on Thursday of the week to get ready. He's having a brain fart. I can tap him on his butt, move him over a half a man and get him lined up, because we know out of this formation, they're going to attack us this way. And that's why we want them in, head up, not in a shade. But also it's the synergy with the back end too, where we've seen them play very well and physical. And we've seen a lot of miscues where you feel like they can't stop anybody on the back end in the linebacking room. So there's just a lot of synergy and a lot of communication between, up and back and side to side that has to happen. And so to have that guy and have it at this juncture, after 5 months with Knowles, be reverberating, about him as a player, it's great to see. And it's truthfully, it's a similar progress that I had. It's, you go in and play, there's some good, there's some bad. Next year, you focus on getting better, and I think there's enough transparency in that building because of what's at stake that you can tell a player, yeah, man, and this off the charts, this and this, we got a lot of work to do, bud. You know what I mean? And it's having that personal conversation, that relationship with the player, for the player to go, I know, coach, even though it's not easy to accept, and I'm up for the challenge. And then when you see that happen throughout spring brawl, happen in the scrimmage, and then, enough so that he becomes that leader, because he's not just doing this with his mouth, his actions, both in the weight room and on the football field are, completely taking everybody and pulling everybody along with him as a leader as well. Yeah. I think that's huge. Hey, let's just jump real quick. I don't want to waste my time because I know you're a busy businessman. Are you concerned about your beloved game of college football at the moment, or and concern meaning, is it going off the rails? I mean, obviously the NCAA this week is after a lot of anguish a week ago,
the NCAA is trying to put the genie sort of back in the bottle or get the train back on the track. Let's put it that way. And all these people, Ryan Day, the term they keep using is we need some guardrails, guardrails. It's the Wild West out there right now. I'm paraphrasing that. He didn't use that term, but he did use the term guardrails. You want some black and white of what's right, what's wrong. You don't, but instead right now, it's just it's just gray everywhere about, what you can and can't do with these collectives, whether you can lure players. Obviously you can't, under NCAA rules, you still can't lure players to your school by offering them money off the top before they sign letters of intent, et cetera. But a lot of that seems to be going on right now, both in the recruiting and the transfer portal. And I know you're paying attention, your kid's coming up. He's going to probably make more money than you did in the NFL just playing college football. But I digress on that. But what's your concern level right now about college football, and can this get straightened out?
Well, I think I am concerned. I think that it is. I was very surprised that when the rules passed and initially created the Wild Wild West, that there weren't at least bumpers like in a bowling lane. You know what I mean? Yeah. Something to keep it on the rails. Okay,
keep will the ball in the lane. Yeah,
it'll fall off if you go fast enough or do something extreme. But at least it keeps most people on a beaten path.
Yeah.
I think I have to say, I think it's great that there's the potential to have USC be back, but I really want Lincoln Riley to fall on his face out there in USC because of how outlandish he has used the lack of guardrails, centered around nil and recruiting and promising, perceptively on what he's trying to create out of USC. More power to him, but it's like one coach shouldn't have that much power because that program was what it was. Southern California, the university is the university. And so all of a sudden one man, who just took a 7-month opportunity with no guardrails and just used it and abused it.
Yeah.
I really feel bad. I had great respect for, what, Bob Stoops had done in Oklahoma. And I think Lincoln Riley, taking over there, underneath the tutelage of Stoops and continuing that great success, had mad respect for that. And then he just up and leaves and goes to USC. I also think, Brian Kelly, I want to see Brian Kelly I want Nick Saban and Alabama, as much as I'm rooting for Alabama, to just embarrass Brian Kelly at LSU for what he did. But that I just have to get that out because those like my real.
Yeah, that sounded like that was burning in your gut for a while. Go ahead now.
Yeah. I just had to get that out because I don't have a platform to to say it other than in around the water cooler. But I think there are absolutely guardrails needed. I have an immense amount of respect for Ryan Day and Ohio State as a program that could probably absolutely be playing in that sandbox.
Yeah.
Of
yes,
showcasing. Not delivering, but showcasing opportunities, in and around the Columbus area, and the amount of money and the amount of families that those names just listed in the South Stands above the scoreboard, that may or may not have a play in nil opportunities, but yet really sticking to winning 16, 17, 18-year-olds, who are still in high school to make the decision to choose us.
Yeah.
And, so I have an immense amount of respect for him. And in any cases, and I truthfully, Mark Pantoni and I, we're on a first name basis, and him and I text a lot. And for the longest time, I would go every time we'd lose a recruit, to the transfer portal, I'm go, oh man, what happened? This 5-star recruit 2 years ago seemed like he was going to be the man. Why is he leaving? And it's just, and truthfully, for all Buckeye fans, who might panic every time that happens, those guys aren't good enough to see the field.
Yeah.
Our, the stables are so full with talent, or the stables are not only full, but those full stables of talent have fallen into better graces with the coaches, based around playing time. And those players, although they're 4- and 5-star recruits and they're still highly talented and may go on and have amazing careers, the writing is on the wall that they will not play anytime soon at Ohio State.
Yeah.
And if they do, not in the capacity or the role that they think, or their parents think, or some money manager that might be giving them bad advice might think for them. So they're pulling the plug now and trying to find a better scenario. More power to them. But
yes,
it took 2 or 3 recruits, and I go, man, this guy too, because it could feel like they come in droves. Sometimes it's like 3 at a time coming right out of spring ball. 2 guys, 3 guys, whatever it is in the transfer portal. Why?
Yeah.
After that scrimmage, the writing was on the wall based around where they're at in April, that they're going to have a hard time seeing the field at the level that they see fit come fall. So what do? Hey, take the easy way out. And I think this is for you and me. I'm a little bit old school, and I thought about this earlier only because, my son's in high school or going to be in high school next year. It's like, I just can't fathom. And also like going over to my mom's house and just got Buckeye stuff everywhere. It's like, I just could never fathom having a house or a room like, most proud moms and dads have to support their son who make this monumental decision to commit to a university after being recruited by 25 programs. You got Ohio State stuff everywhere. And then one day you don't.
Yeah.
And you have another, that's like, oh my God, I've driven a Ford for 25 years. And then I pull up in the driveway with a Dodge.
Yeah.
And everyone just goes, what?
A Durango. Go ahead.
That mentality. It is so, again, I understand it's, they have one opportunity that they need to see that through. And it just, I couldn't fathom. And that's my old school approach, but I know the game has changed. But the long story, I've given you a long answer to, pretty easy. I think the guardrails are absolutely necessary. On the flip side, I absolutely think once those guardrails are set, players need to make their decisions based around what's best for them and their family, to get a great education, to compete for a national championship, to potentially play in the NFL, because you have one shot. And it's, those are a lot of, life-changing decisions that are made in a 5 to 6 year window, from the time that you're 17 until you're 22. So, and there's a lot of things that skew it. But I think the NCAA should have come out with better bumpers or guardrails initially, even if they were very wide. At least the field you're playing on, as opposed to just saying, go roam wherever you want to roam and do whatever you want to do. And I think trying to reel that in by the NCAA will lead to programs that got comfortable with the success that they found with no guardrails, and you may see some sanctions coming, in years, while they still try to potentially cheat the system and not abide by those guardrails in every circumstance.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Wilhelm. Matt Wilhelm, thanks for joining me. We're running out of time here. I'd ask you 10 more questions, but I keep thinking, man, what if CJ Stroud had jumped into the transfer portal this year, after finishing the way he did, and just go, okay, basically his agent or whoever is looking after his welfare. Okay. Highest bidder, kind of like you've seen that a couple of places, like with University of Miami, throwing money at the kid that was going to transfer to Ohio State basketball wise, and ends up going to Miami. And caused havoc down there. But it would have been an interesting scenario that would have really gotten people's attention, wouldn't it? If I know Caleb Williams left Oklahoma and went to USC to follow his coach, but imagine Bryce Young and CJ Stroud in the transfer portal right now, waiting for the highest bid.
Yeah, but
That'd
I think
crazy, wouldn't it?
To that point, I just think what program, if CJ Stroud was really trying to better himself, and I'm asking this to you, and I'm asking it to Buckeye Nation, I'm asking it to any college football fan that listens to your podcast, where in the country could CJ Stroud have found a better situation than he has at Ohio State? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm talking about free agency, meaning go to get the best money you can get, not necessarily the best situation,
But here's the thing.
Because you see guys in the NFL go to places that aren't necessarily their better situations. Go ahead.
No, there's no doubt. But I guess to my point, and again, I think, coming out of the NFL draft that just ended, the 2 gentlemen you mentioned, CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, it's Stroud is like plus 200 or plus 250. And I think Bryce Young is, plus 400 to be the number 1 overall pick next year.
Oh, yeah.
So while you may dabble and make a couple of $1 million, the amount of money, well, first of all, they're going to have the highest guaranteed contract of any rookie in next year's class, whoever goes number 1, right? Yeah. So it's going to be, $27 million guaranteed, right? With, 14 of it the day you sign your contract. Okay. There's no nil contract that can touch that amount of money. So why play with a scenario that allows, and at Ohio State, you're going to have the best weapons to throw to. You're going to potentially win a Big Ten championship again, which is, again, opportunity. Marketing dollars will follow the championship games.
Yep.
If you beat Notre Dame and you win the Big Ten championship, you're going to make the Final Four. So all eyeballs are on you again.
Yeah, Matt Wilhelm and I ran out of time there, ladies and gentlemen. But once again, I appreciate Matt Wilhelm joining the Tim May podcast. We'll have a lot to talk about all through the summer as things develop along the NIL front, along the football front. Ohio State's recruiting is going to keep rolling. It does appear. I mean, with Dylan Raiola in the fold now from a commitment standpoint for the 2024 season, arguably the best quarterback. He's just going into his junior year in high school, but he's expected to be maybe perhaps the best quarterback available for the 2024 class, and he's committed to be a Buckeye. Things are just going to get more interesting from here. So for Matt Wilhelm and for myself, until next week for the Tim May podcast, we'll see you then.